Welcome on the Flower Path, the show that journeys through Japanese art. On the Hanamichi you will find ancient art forms of different kinds, Kabuki costumes, no theatre masks, bunraku puppetry, bugaku dance, magnificent art forms to be explored through films, poems, interviews and more. I am your host, Suleiman Suleiman. So nice they named him twice. Wink wink. And today I'm joined by a very special guest who from head to toe is immaculately dressed. He is a curious chameleon, a man of many names, from Ziggy Stardust, the thin white duke, to Aladdin Sane. He is an actor, musician, painter, producer, collector, writer, singer, and 6-time Grammy Award winner. So please welcome on the Hanamichi, the one and only Mr. David Bowie. Bowie, it's an honour to have you on this show. 2 questions my listeners are eager to know. What sparked your fascination with Japanese art, and when did this love affair actually start? Thank you, Suleiman. It's a pleasure to be here, and yes, my love for Japan is indeed very dear. I grew up in the 60s, which was a phenomenal time, when London pulsed with dance and mime. It was during this period that I met the artist Lindsay Kemp, whose mime company was by far the best. I joined his troupe and wrote music for their plays in exchange for lessons in performing on stage. And what made you join the Lindsay Kemp Company? Well, I was young and hungry for new discoveries. London in the 60s was a very avant-garde era, with great troupes like the Bread and Puppet Theatre, and the Living Theatre, and Expressionist Theatre at the Roundhouse, and Stephen Burkoff. It was the period of multimedia shows, and there were mime companies everywhere you'd go. And what made Lindsay Kemp's mime company so unique? I get the impression it had a certain mystique. Yes, Lindsay's performance style had a Japanese grace. He studied kabuki gestures and painted his face. He taught me everything I know about lighting and sets. He was an incredible mentor and such a dear friend. So Lindsay introduced you to kabuki, but then you made it your own. So how did your relationship with this art form grow? Well, I'm terrified of flying, so I took the boat to Japan. I was eager to experience it with my own eyes and hands. My first trip to the island was in April 1973. I still remember my excitement as I sailed the Japan Sea. And is it true that on your 3rd day in Tokyo, you went to the Kabuki-za and met with the legendary Onagata? Yes, I had the pleasure to meet Tamasaburō Bandō V. He was 22 at the time, and I was 26. I remember sitting in his dressing room at the very end of his play, observing how he intricately removed the makeup from his face. Tamasaburō taught me kabuki makeup techniques, which is itself a whole art form called kumadori. I know you are also very passionate about kabuki movement. For my curious listeners, can you please talk us through this? Of course. Kabuki's stylized movement is a marvel to behold. It's exaggerated yet precise, commanding and bold. These movements match the rhythm of shamisen music. As a sensory experience, kabuki is very lucid. For instance, if a warrior enters the stage with heavy stomping feet, wooden clappers sound his steps with a thunderous beat. I love kabuki movement because it reminds me of mime. There's a beautiful synergy between these 2 different styles. And speaking of style, you collaborated with Kansai Yamamoto, who is one of the most important figures in Japanese fashion. Can you share with my listeners how that all happened? Well, Kansai was a man way ahead of his time. Before we first met, I bought his costume designs. I was then introduced to him in 1971, and from that moment on we had such great fun. He designed the costumes for my world tour in '73. These glorious garments inspired the creation of Ziggy. The Tokyo pot body suit and the space samurai cape capture the subversive essence of Kabuki plays. And then you had the cupid cherry lips and wild red hair. You definitely embraced Kabuki's theatrical flair. Bowie, I've got a funny story with Kansai Yamamoto to share. I had the privilege to meet him in July 2019. He wore a flamboyant floral suit in shades of vibrant green. It was a special event at Japan House celebrating his art, and during the Q&A, I raised my hand to take part. I asked Kansai, "Kabuki's influence on your costume design is very clear to see. What aspects of the art form do you resonate with most deeply?" His answer to my question was cryptic and obscure. What he truly meant, I'm still not entirely sure. But Kansai replied, "As you will know, the library of Kabuki is vast and deep. It extends way beyond the clouds and far beneath our feet. Its meaning is not in what you hear or what you see, but in the shadows where the light simply cannot be. It is a silence that speaks, a truth half told, a thread that unravels but never grows old." Thank you very much, Kansai. I shall spend the rest of my life trying to process this. Yes, that sounds like Kansai, alright. He was such a spirited human being, and always very kind. You could feel his love and energy beam through his eyes. Bowie, I love hearing about your journey into Kabuki and Mime. There's so much I want to ask, but we're sadly running out of time. So as a final question, before I let you go, what artistic advice can you give me and my listeners at home?
Never play to the gallery, I think. But you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Thank you for these wise words, Bowie. It's been a privilege to delve into your intriguing mind. I'm grateful for your insights and for kindly giving us your time. You are on the Hanamichi. Please like and subscribe. From myself and David Bowie, sayonara, goodbye.
Well, you know what? This has been an incredible pleasure. And you were really interesting. I didn't know all those things you were telling me about yourselves. It's nice to have met you. I'm glad we did finally meet at last. And all I can say is, goodbye, goodbye. We'll meet again sometime, somewhere. Ta-ta. 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 Ta-ta.